Good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, and want to thank you for joining us, including Dr. Park, of course. I'm Peter Husey. I'm Director of Strategic Deterrence Studies here at the Mitchell Institute. And I want to thank our partners, the Advanced Nuclear Weapons Alliance Deterrence Center. And we welcome you to the next in our series of seminars on the nuclear weapons complex modernization and NNSA. We created this series earlier this year with the help of our colleagues in the NNSA community, particularly the administrator, Lisa Gordon-Haggerty. And this complements our nuclear, ballistic missile defense and space series that the Mitchell Institute has been hosting, and I've been doing since 1983 and 2014, respectively. As General Hyten said not too long ago, the current nuclear modernization requirements for the United States are going to span at least 2 more decades of very heavy lifting until the last Columbia-class submarine is placed in the water in 2042. In this regard, one has to be mindful of the work of 2 of our colleagues, Mark Schneider and Jim Howe, who've written that the Russians can deploy, given their current SNDVs or their platforms, upwards of 4,400 strategic nuclear warheads with the force structure they now have under New START. The United States, on the other hand, has a limited hedge capability, and we're seeking to expand our PIT production from single digits to 30 and then to 80 by the end of the next decade. Similarly, if you go to the 2020 Nuclear Handbook, published by the office where Drew Walter is the head, you'll see a chart that I did along with our good friends at SAIC, that between 1996, when the last B-2 bomber, when the program was shut down, through 2029, we will have deployed not a single new strategic nuclear weapon platform. And as General Harensack said, we indeed took a nuclear procurement holiday after the Cold War. A colleague of mine at the Global Strike Command called it a nuclear nap. Now, to get us back on track and to better inform the nuclear community about NNSA issues, we kicked off this series in January and heard from Lisa Gordon-Haggerty. In May, we featured Drew Walter from OSD. And in July, we heard from Dr. Verdon of NNSA. And we have 2 additional events planned this year after we're concluded today with Dr. Brent Park. He is, you know, the Deputy Administrator for Defense Nuclear Non-proliferation. He was confirmed by the Senate in March of 2018. He leads and coordinates NNSA's efforts to prevent nuclear weapons proliferation and reduce the threat of nuclear and radiological terrorism around the world. Dr. Park is a nuclear physicist, extensive experience in congressional and executive branch interactions. He collaborates with and advises representatives of the U.S. National Defense, Homeland Security, and intelligence communities in the application of advanced technologies to fulfill national security missions. Dr. Park has the tough task of keeping nuclear material and nuclear weapons out of the hands of bad actors around the world, a critically important job. And with that, I want to welcome you, sir. NNSA and Dr. Park are uniquely qualified to do the technical cooperation and coordination that is required to not only modernize our nuclear stockpile and recapitalize its supporting infrastructure, but also to ensure that proliferation is controlled and hopefully rolled back. Thus, I want to thank Dr. Park for being so gracious today to join us. I look forward to your remarks, and I particularly want to thank your NNSA colleagues and Joel Spangenberg in particular, and our partners of ANWA, of course, and those who have helped support this series from various industries. I want to thank you as well. And now I'd like to turn it over to my partners at ANWA, my friends Jeff and David. Again, welcome, Dr. Park, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Peter. I'm going to offer a brief presentation on why deterrence. Again, thank you, Peter. Peter has been a steadfast, and I've said this before, in his pursuit of ensuring a robust U.S. strategic deterrent to protect our America and our global allies. And we sincerely thank you. We thank the Mitchell Institute for our partnership on these NNSA forums. And thanks to all of you for joining us today for our NNSA forum with Dr. Brent Park. I'm Jeff Crater. We're pleased that our over 170 now have signed up to join us today from Congress to DOD, from NNSA, the think tank community, media, and industry. Our forum today is being recorded and is open to the press. We encourage questions. In case you want to remain anonymous for your questions, you can take advantage of the comment function on Zoom. I'm joined today with my colleague David Charrington, who will moderate the Q&A portion. We co-founded the Advanced Nuclear Weapons Alliance and associated Deterrence Center forums as a bipartisan environment to educate the public and interested parties about the key issues around modernization of our nation's strategic nuclear deterrent. We're pleased to partner with the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies to bring you this now fourth in a six-part series on NNSA. As we do for all our forums, I'm offering this brief primer on why it's important to maintain and modernize our strategic nuclear deterrent. It's important in this age of information and, as I've said before, unfortunately disinformation, to make sure each of us do the research and really educate ourselves by seeking a wide variety of sources on the rationale for deterrence, and to pay particular attention to what our friends and particularly our foes overseas are doing to modernize their deterrent. It all begins and ends in NNSA, the cornerstone of our strategic nuclear deterrent, with its nuclear complex across our national nuclear weapons laboratories, manufacturing facilities, suppliers, and universities. It's critical that we continue to modernize this consolidated NNSA defense program's infrastructure that's emerged from the massive Cold War complex. For if we don't, we begin to chip away and weaken our deterrent. We must also maintain a vibrant nuclear non-proliferation program at NNSA to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and help keep us safe. So here you have it. The more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. That's what Admiral Rickover, father of the nuclear Navy, said in a 1983 speech, which I think helps capture the essence of strategic nuclear deterrence. There was a time in our nation's and our world history when tens of millions of people died because we lacked an overarching deterrent. That was World War II. 70 million people perished in the worst atrocity in human history. Some estimate as high as 150 million. Our strategic nuclear deterrent prevents tens of millions more from death. In other words, World War III. Our deterrent stood us very well during the Cold War and has evolved in the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War buildup. In those remarkable words, President Reagan, standing before the Berlin Wall in 1987, said, "President Gorbachev, tear down this wall." The wall collapses in '89, and by 1991, the Soviet Union collapses into autonomous republics, ending the Cold War. In the United States, deterrence personnel were downsized and production of delivery systems and nuclear weapons production halted, including nuclear weapons materials like highly enriched uranium and plutonium, ordered by President H.W. Bush on July 13, 1992. This sealed the fate of plutonium pit manufacturing at the Rocky Flats plant in Colorado. Cold War downsizing under H.W. Bush went forward under Clinton. You can see what the Rocky Flats plant looked like in 1985 compared to its cleanup end state in 2005. This shuttered plutonium manufacturing capability was moved to Los Alamos, and now we're working to constitute and reconstruct a modern pit manufacturing facility at the Savannah River site in South Carolina. Moving out from the peaceful and prosperous 1990s, then 9/11 happened. Terrorism hit the United States, the nation mourned, and the counterterrorism and military buildup started overseas. Deterrence modernization was put on the back burner. And so it goes, while America and our allies fight global terrorism, and rightly so, China and Russia modernize their nuclear forces. Starting under Obama and doubling down under Trump, with bipartisan support from Congress, we've stopped kicking the can on strategic nuclear deterrence modernization. We're on a 30-year, $1.2 trillion trajectory to maintain and modernize our deterrent, replacing B-2s by continuing to fly B-52s with the Air-Launched Cruise Missile and the future long-range standoff missiles. because B-52s, of course, lack stealth. We'll replace both the new stealth B-21 starting in 2030, running through 2050. Plus, we're adding nuclear-capable F-35s. On land, we're replacing Minuteman III with a ground-based strategic deterrent, or GBSD, and modern ICBMs. And at sea, 14 Ohio-class submarines with 12 Columbias with upgraded Trident II D5 missiles. NNSA has been modernizing throughout the decade, but much more needs to be done at the weapons plants and national laboratories to maintain, in many cases, restore capability. Restore we've let atrophy since the wall fell. That is, to manufacture nuclear materials and the warheads themselves. And very relevant to today's topic, nuclear nonproliferation complements strategic nuclear deterrent by reducing nuclear weapons grade and radiologic materials in commerce, working with our global allies, and strengthening partnerships with the unaligned, and modernizing to deter nuclear weapons threats, as well as World War III. So we're delighted to have Dr. Brent Park, the Deputy Administrator for Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation with NNSA again. Dr. Park has a unique and extraordinary background, as Peter has well alluded to, for his current position as a nuclear physicist and coming from a long career in national laboratories. We've emailed you his bio if you want to check that out. Dr. Parks was confirmed by the Senate on March 22nd, 2018, and I think Peter's thoroughly reviewed his qualifications, and I therefore want to turn it over to Dr. Parks to address nuclear nonproliferation and strategic nuclear deterrence together, keeping America and our global partners safe. Dr. Park.
Thank you so much. Thanks to Mitchell Institute and NWA for organizing these informative talks and conversations. I want to say thank you to all of you. And okay, now there you are. That was actually a really good setting the stage by Peter and Jeff. And I'm not sure what else I can discuss after a wonderful overview of what it is we're up against. But you know, I thought this is a conversation that I like to have whenever I have one of these Zoom or WebEx meetings. I'm more interested in having conversations. So the most difficult part about giving a presentation such as this is recognizing the people who actually made it happen. So if you skip one of them, there's a price to pay. So even at the expense of missing out one or two, let me go through the laundry list. It's going to be really quick. So about, you're all my friends. So if I, do not mention your name, please forgive me. But I thank all of you. Again, thanks to Mitchell Institute and NWA for organizing this. I actually noticed that some of the early career people I had encouraged to participate in this Zoom conversations, and I saw their names. I really appreciate our next generation leaders taking time to join us, and I thank you for that. I actually not only saw headquarters people, but also from our labs. So I feel really good about seeing the names of our next generation leaders. And I really appreciate this opportunity. When David and Jeff came by to see me a couple of years ago, they shared with me the reasons why they wanted to get this thing going. And I gave a talk about a year and a half ago. I didn't realize it has been that long. But I really appreciate this opportunity for me to personally thank all the support we've been getting from Congress, by the way. We don't say enough thank yous to our friends and the partners. And we actually work with the departments and agencies to get the non-proliferation mission accomplished. But without the support, this is a solid, enduring support from our Congress. And some of the staff members have joined us to participate in this important conversation. They are making things work. Without their solid support, it would not be possible to keep the mission going. So I really want to say thank you to all of you directly or indirectly involved in making this work happen. So you heard my background. I'm a nuclear physicist, which means I know how to put together widgets or detectors or systems to do monitoring and verification and to do measurements and so on and so forth. So without going through my background too much, but I retired from Los Alamos. I retired from Nevada test site while it was still called the Nevada test site. And before getting into my position today, I retired from Oak Ridge National Lab. So I went from the weapons physics lab to what I call National Outdoor Laboratory for weapons testing and related work to a science lab that is one of the best in the world for multi-purpose research programs, doing the cutting edge computer science work, all that to support the national security work. So again, I actually bring about 30 years of a national lab experience to my position, and I appreciate the kind introduction. I also saw organizers shared with me who registered for this event. So I want to get this thank yous out of the way. And I will have a chance to acknowledge international partnership that we have with many European countries to make sure we have a robust nuclear non-proliferation work throughout the world. And special thanks to Belgium for their willingness to work with us on Mali 99. That actually uses highly enriched uranium, and they've been really forthcoming to convert the HU-based Mali 99 production with LEU, low enriched uranium. So I appreciate their leadership. I saw our friends from Japan Embassy, France, and other countries. I appreciate that. So I'd like to welcome all our friends. Non-proliferation is not done by the United States alone. So I'm really encouraged by the fact that we have friends joining to share thoughts and ideas to make the partnership even stronger. So before I move to the DNN, or Defense Nuclear Non-Proliferation overview quickly before I take questions from you. We are actually as much interested in peaceful use of nuclear energy, by the way, nuclear technologies. The United States has taken the leadership from 1950s. We're the first country to actually share nuclear technologies for peaceful purposes. And I actually reference this line all the time, wherever I give a talk. It was in 1953 Atoms for Peace speech at the UN General Assembly by our president back then. And we've been very consistent in what we expect out of our partnerships and when we do nuclear energy cooperations. And under that umbrella, within the Energy Department, we work closely with the Office of Nuclear Energy. And Assistant Secretary Rita Brownwell and I are close, and we actually meet regularly, weekly and biweekly. We compare notes to restore the US leadership in the nuclear energy sector. And the part of my motivation for working with the industry partners is to make sure non-proliferation requirements are baked in the design stage, rather than worrying about non-pro after people have built and operated nuclear reactors or whatever it is that we're talking about. So I'd like to actually get that out of the way. I need to thank the DOE leadership, and you all know our Secretary Dan Brouillette, and as well as my boss, Lisa Gordon-Heggery, who gave a talk. And so I think I thanked most of the people that I need to thank. So let me get to the a little bit of overview before I start taking questions. And since Jeff covered most of my talk anyway during his overview, we focus on the three things. How do you actually achieve nuclear non-proliferation objectives? And it evolves around the nuclear materials. And you can actually talk about the production, manufacturing, facilities, transportation, anything related to nuclear materials, and also technologies. What it takes to actually get to the next level of more threat-focused the activities or materials leading up to the nuclear weapons, obviously. And we also focus a lot on what we call expertise, what we call people aspect of it, because you need to actually have all those things to actually get to the what I call nuclear weapons stage. And we monitor all those things. So a substantial part of my program actually focuses on removing, reducing, eliminating unneeded nuclear materials, or the materials that could be used for making bombs and so on. And I'm happy to share with you that over the years, we removed enough materials that you could have made over 20,000 nuclear weapons with. That's phenomenal. That's over 20,000 nuclear weapons quantity materials we have removed, working with other departments and agencies within the US government, but also with international organizations like the IAEA and many of our friendly countries, like-minded countries, and I should start with the United Kingdom, Canada. I mean, I could go down the list, but there are so many countries that work with us. And since I'm on that note of working with others, over the last 40 plus years, we have successfully converted more than 100 research reactors that have used highly enriched uranium. Now they are using LEU. So the threat level has gone down substantially. We continue to remove the materials that should not be in the peaceful use categorization. And as of this writing, I think, or this moment, the latest report that I got from my people is now over 30 countries plus Taiwan are free of HEU, highly enriched uranium. Again, we have taken a strong leadership position to eliminate the materials that could be used for what we call RDD, radiological disposal device, as well as improvised or full-up nuclear weapons. And that's actually a strong part of how we achieve the nuclear non-proliferation objectives. Get the materials that could be used for terrible things out of the circulation. And we have great partners. And I only mentioned the Belgium as one example, but Japan has been one of the strongest allies. They've been working with us closely to eliminate many of the what we call SNM, special nuclear materials. And the list goes on and on. I would offend the rest of the countries by not mentioning, but again, I just want to use those as examples of making sure the materials are better protected. And we work closely with the IAEA. I think most of you do know, International Atomic Energy Association. It plays a critical role in keeping the non-proliferation objectives strong. And by working with them, we've been able to share our what we call lessons learned. There are many countries who are interested in nuclear energies, by the way, nuclear power plants. By working with the IAEA and other countries, we want to share with them our experience. We want actually we want them to learn as much as possible as what it would take for them to actually oversee the nuclear operations in a peaceful manner. So I like to acknowledge the role of NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They've been out there working with us to make sure that the countries that are interested in working with us, learning from us, could actually get the oversight regulatory bodies set up already to get things moving. And there's a lot of effort underway by what I call coordinated groups of people within the US government working with the international partners. And the next one is obviously pushing the envelope on the detection and verification. And that's actually what we do working with other agencies. I'm happy to share with you that we have been successfully deploying explosive monitoring payload with just about every single United States Air Force satellite. So when you see Air Force satellite going up, it carries our payload that actually looks for explosive monitoring. It has many useful purposes. So I could spend a little more time if some of you are interested. But again, it actually helps us to monitor how things are handled over the what I call global scale. And we do a lot of work in the safeguards arena. And I already talked about the fact that we work with other countries and the fact that we work with the international organizations like IAEA. We work with other countries to make sure the not only safeguards technique, but the tools are available so that we can actually better protect the world. And there's a heavy duty engagement, by the way. Last year, I think we completed over 90 training sessions working with other countries. Even during pandemic this year, we have done more than 30 training with other countries and organizations. So I could go on, but essentially that's the high-level snapshot. I want to leave enough time for Q's and A's. I think that might be at least the background interesting for you, and I'll ask David or whomever to carry the next phase forward. I'm happy to take any questions.
Dr. Park, thank you very much. Thanks very much for your kind remarks at the beginning and for joining us and giving us such interesting information to talk about and think about. for everyone. Please prepare questions for Dr. Park. I already got a few in that have come in the chat space, which I'm happy to read for the for Dr. Park. But also, you can also raise your virtual hand, and I see a hand up already as well. So I'll get to those questions in a minute. I'm going to take the prerogative to ask a couple to start off myself. First, Dr. Park, the question is, can we safely have only a nuclear non-proliferation program or a strategic nuclear deterrent program? Could we just have one of those? Many support one or the other, but are they intrinsically linked? And so I guess that's you know, is there ever a time when we won't have nuclear weapons in the world? Is that the ultimate success story?
So obviously, the ultimate goal is that we eliminate the nuclear threats. At the same time, realistically, and as a physicist, I'm actually obligated to give you some data. And the fact of the matter is that every year, United States alone, we generate over 2,000 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel from our power plants. And each metric ton could generate roughly 6 to 7 kilograms. So you do that times 2,000, and every year, by the fact that we are operating nuclear power plant, we generate over 1,000 kilograms. And you do multiply, you need to multiply that by 3, because we actually generate about 3 times, 1/3 of the world's nuclear power in the United States. So again, it's not one of those that I can give you a simple answer. So long as we operate the power plants, it's not a matter of, you know, it's not an optional thing, because you know, once some bad actors start separating out the plutonium, you know, that's the pathway over to the nuclear devices. Going back to your, I think the intent of the question is, it's hard to separate. It's nearly impossible, because we were born with a weapons program in 40s. The moment that our pioneers developed the nuclear weapons during the early 40s, they were already thinking about nuclear non-proliferation, not using these words, to better protect and safeguard. And there was nuclear security, obviously, because of the classified nature of it. But again, nuclear non-proliferation is born within the weapons complex. And even today, from practical matter, it's almost impossible for anyone to separate out the DNN from the weapons complex, because we have to use the weapons complex. When we take the materials back, guess where they go? I have to use NA-10's facilities. I have to use the weapons complex to actually get rid of the materials or store them or do something to it to neutralize its effectiveness. So I was asked that question multiple times in different words. So long as there's a nuclear material that can be used for you know, nuclear devices with the bad intent, it's not separable. And I think we've been responsible all these years, from early days in 40s, that we've been mindful of the safety and security. That obviously, when we lost the individual through criticality accident in 40s, we woke up and said, oh my goodness, we actually have to do this the right way to make sure the workers are protected and the materials is kept safe and so on. So again, I'm giving a little bit of a high level, you know, hand waving arguments. I don't think we can separate that from not only practical perspective, but from the reality of what we're facing potentially. If we were to stop one or the other, it's not a solvable equation anymore. Back to you.
Very good. One more for you, then I'm going to go to the ones that are coming in from the larger group. And if you write in, I would appreciate if you put your name and organization with your question as well. So here in the 21st century, all kinds of new technologies are happening, which create new threats for the United States and our allies. And so, to name a few of these, hypersonics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, the current space race. These are just examples. There's many more. And just last week, there was a news story where the artificial intelligence pilot was able to defeat the human pilot in a virtual contest. it sounds like movies of the past have arrived. The story, here we are. AI can defeat the human. So with those in mind, they're not specifically nuclear materials, they're not specifically nuclear threats, but they certainly can tilt the balance on security, including our strategic nuclear deterrent. Are these technologies and threats that they may become, or is it part of your world to be considering those as well? Does that fit within your role?
So I appreciate that. And in fact, I appreciate the examples that you have cited. In fact, Administrator Lisa Gordon-Haggerty looked at me and challenged me to start worrying about, although we've been doing it for many years, how to anticipate threats and respond to emerging and evolving threats. So in fact, I'm happy to share with you that there is a small change coming within my organization to look at some of these threats real time. And we're in the process of creating an agile organization to look for these threats. Obviously, connecting points would be nuclear space for DNN, but we're looking at the cybersecurity. And people ask me all the time about why would the DNN, Defense Nuclear Non-Proliferation Office, worry about cybersecurity? As it turns out, for decades, we actually worried about the quote unquote bad guys entering into our nuclear facilities, whether in US or overseas, and then taking the materials out. And then we actually have been responsible for upgrading the security protection measures everywhere. And guess what? The latest and the greatest equipment that you are using are all digital and electronics. And the cybersecurity, digital, electronic, you can connect the dots. So we've been paying a lot of attention to that to make sure that the nuclear facilities are better protected from cyber attacks, because all our gates and I don't want to go into gory details, but all those things are computer control. And anything that is under computer control, we have to worry about it. Not only that, we worry about the material during the shipment or transportation. And I acknowledge that Japan's leadership in working with us to worry about how do we actually make sure we monitor and make sure that things are not compromised during the shipment and so on. So there are a lot of things that go on. Back to your AI quickly. We've been actually doing what we call data analytics using big computers for a long time without really advertising to the world. We want to anticipate some of the possible pathways so we can actually prevent or create obstacles to slow down or eliminate those opportunities. So we are perfectly in sync with the department's latest initiative in getting the AI up and running. Obviously, some biased. The NNSA or the Formal Weapons Program, we are the first ones to actually use supercomputers in the entire government system, and I'm going to say that with a great pride. So NNSA has been doing really wonderful computing work, and so I'm not the one who should take credit for that. It's Charlie Verdon's program. But I'm happy to share with you that we've been on top of that. We appreciate congressional support to get our computing program up and running. And the sustained support is a critical part of what we do, not just doing the 3D modeling for weapons programs, but also projecting possible pathways so we can actually stop these illicit efforts. Back to you.
Very good. Received a question from Scott Vanderham from Northrop Grumman. He prefaces the question first with thank you very much for your government service. But his question is after a very successful career in the technical side, can you share why you agreed to come back to this leadership role within NNSA?
Now we're getting personal. I love these questions, by the way. And so, people think, they can say no when they get a phone call. But something interesting happens when you get a phone call and somebody on the other end says, would you like to be part of a system to help shape the policies to put us on a better track? And I bet every one of you would say yes. And so did I. And this has been a great ride. I mean, I would not change it for anything. And I've never known working from the labs, by the way, about 30 years or so, that we had such a great team of people working at the headquarters. I mean, how could I actually appreciate what the federal workforce does? When every day I would go into the lab, work with my guys to develop tools and so on. But again, we have an incredible team of people, not just within NNSA, but DOE and elsewhere. I work with the State Department colleagues closely. Incredible amount of information and the volume of work we have to digest for the labs to do their work, by the way. So the fact that I actually brought the 30 years of lab experience, I can truly appreciate what the headquarters people do. And I need to tell you the truth, by the way. I drive my people crazy. Here's a physicist, wearing a head of a policy, and I want to solve equations all the time. I talk about formulas and what's detectable, what's not detectable. But the bottom line is, the way we make the nation strong and our international alliance strong is to make sure technology could support the policy. Policy is realistic based on what we actually can do today and tomorrow. So I'm happy to make that link even stronger. I'm just happy to actually have this opportunity. And a few weeks ago, I gave a talk at the National Atomic Testing Museum based in Las Vegas. And I challenged my friends and colleagues, you're gonna get a phone call, you need to say yes. And I'm gonna actually do the same thing with all my friends. What a great ride. I would not change it for anything. Whether you serve a day or for 3 years, 4 years, or whatever, it's great to serve your country whenever, however, and wherever. So I'm really excited about my time at the headquarters. But again, what gave me extra thrill is for me to actually have FaceTime with the federal workforce that I did not have on day-to-day basis. And I know a few of you are listening. You guys rock. You're awesome. And you guys rock. And I'm able to say that having come from the labs. Back to you.
Outstanding. Thank you. I'm going to recognize Dan Leone has a question. Dan, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. Do you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, thanks for having this. Thanks for another great event, guys. Dr. Park, thank you so much for making your day shorter and for coming. I'm Dan Leone, reporter with the Exchange Monitor. I'm here with our customary first mud ball. You mentioned that Congress has been very supportive of the NNSA, which is true. And there's one program that they have supported even more beyond a degree that the NNSA had asked for support. And it's a program that's had a great deal of success, but got a black mark last year. That's the cesium replacement project to replace cesium-137 containing medical equipment with equipment that doesn't contain it, because bad actors might do bad stuff with the cesium sources. And so what I'm asking about here is the Harborview Research and Training Center in downtown Seattle at the University of Washington. They're now talking about that like you might talk about a building at Hanford, right? It's closed, people don't go in there. Part of it might have to get demolished. And we're talking 2 miles in one direction is the Space Needle and 2 miles in the other is the Seahawks. It's not to say that the program ought to be written off. To the contrary, I think it's still one of the more successful in your portfolio. But I mean, you talk about writing policy to change things and help things. What are you doing to fix what went wrong with that program?
Appreciate your question, Dan. So we're in the middle of cleaning up that area. So for the people who may not know much details, I'll give you literally 10-second summary of what actually happened. So we actually have been going around the country to convert or eliminate the use of cesium-137 sources that are used for medical purposes, my words, to sanitize blood and so on. But because of the security requirements to protect the material, and because of a potential misuse of the material if it's stolen, Congress actually has allocated the funding for us to replace them with X-ray machines. And we've been doing that fairly well. We're on our way to kind of complete the first round, almost all of it by 2027, if we're allowed to continue the work. Back to this incident. So one of our subcontractors actually performed the work, and there was actually quality control issues. And we are looking at that to learn from this event and back to the Harborview building itself. I get the almost weekly report as to what's being done and so on and so forth. And I appreciate the possibility of how bad it could be, but we're on our way to clean up the building by the end of this year. And that's the projection. Even during the pandemic, we actually have people working out of the facility. A little bit of correction is that some of the people are allowed in and out depending upon what they do to retrieve the materials and so on. It's not like nobody can enter it. We have a qualified crew working in and out. And I think we actually have done just as much one could possibly do. We have a very dedicated crew repeating the measurements to make sure it satisfies University of Washington people as well as Washington State oversight people. So again, I think we're on our track to finish cleaning up towards the end of this calendar year or early next year. And we are hopeful that University of Washington could reoccupy the building within a matter of a year or so from today. Obviously, it depends on what else we find along the way, but we've been making pretty good progress. And trust me when I say this, we actually have a large team of people. In fact, we're reviewing the assessments as to what actually happened to make sure we apply the lessons learned, not only for this type of work, but throughout the complex for related work. So we're not wasting this opportunity to learn from this mistake. So what I can share with you is this actually further supports why we need to get this kind of material out of the way. But again, I appreciate your question and concerns. I'm happy to share with you again that we're on track to finish cleaning up that area by the end of this calendar year or early next year. And we hope to go through what we call remodeling of certain spaces, so it'd be safe for people to enter. We want to make sure it's actually at the level of what we call adjacent buildings, far from it, the actual background level, so people could occupy. I think we're on track to make things happen. We are committed, by the way, just so that you know, Dan, even during the pandemic, we have gone through a very elaborate procedure for making sure workers are safe. We actually have different teams going in and out, and we actually have a pretty strong record of having cleaned up different parts of the building. And again, I'm happy to share with you as soon as we get the final reports from investigation team and so on and so forth. And I'm sure PA is listening to this conversation, and they'll be one of the first people to actually have a copy of that report, I'm certain.
Thank you, Dr. Park. We got several questions in the chat space. Let me run through a few of those. I can't see who this question's from, but it's asking, do you have a better sense of when the postponed Non-proliferation Treaty Review Conference will take place?
So obviously, this pandemic has created all kinds of problems, including RevCon that was originally scheduled for New York. And what we got is it's being planned for early next year. And obviously, it depends on how things are. But again, we're hopeful it will take place sometime early next year. And the fact that many countries are interested in actually having this dialogue around the RevCon means that a commitment is there, and I'm happy to report that we're anxious to get things moving again. And so thanks for that question, by the way. Thanks for asking a very detailed question, as it turns out.
Very good. I got a question. I apologize if I mispronounced the name. Dong Hyun Kim from the Voice of America Korea Service. The first part of their question kind of reviews back to the hearing last year before the Senate Armed Services Committee with Secretary Esper. It was being asked when he was being asked questions about North Korea's WMD and missile facilities in a crisis and so forth. And I'm trying to read because there's a lot of writing here. the heart of the question is there been any productive discussion going on since that hearing from last year? Is there, and also anything you could say ongoing on the B6112 development, one of that effort? So I guess there's two separate questions there. One about North Korea. Is there anything productive discussions going on over the last, I guess it looks like it's about 12 months?
Yeah, well, I'll do the B61. I don't think I'm able to comment on that one. So that's actually more appropriate for a colleague of mine, Charlie Burton, to answer that. Back to North Korea. Maybe I can actually answer in a following manner. We actually have been prepared to work with any and all countries, all partners, international organizations, to provide our assistance and support. There is a talk of removing materials and the weapons from DPRK. That's ongoing conversation by both the Secretary of State Pompeo and the Secretary of Defense Esper and others, including our Secretary. I'm happy to share with you that NNSA owns and is responsible for much of the technologies and the experts to be able to lend hand. So we're standing by and we're anxiously waiting for that opportunity to denuclearize Korean Peninsula. And but again, we have experts and we have know-hows, and we are ready to work with international bodies to actually get the job done. We're looking for that opportunity. So conversation still goes on, and let's see if we can actually turn this into a great opportunity to realize that a global objective to denuclearize Korean Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Park. This is from Patty Jane Geller from the Heritage Foundation, and she is interested to know that if the U.S. were to return to nuclear testing, what impact, if any, would this have on non-proliferation?
So that's an interesting question, hypothetical, by the way. I think what we have been saying, in fact, much of that belongs to, again, Dr. Charles Burton. About, I don't want to pump or reflect the questions too much. There are conditions under which we actually have stated that we might do testing to ensure our stockpile is safe and secure. And so I'm not sure if we're deviating too much from that. But again, we've been forthcoming in terms of reducing the stockpile. And if you look at the number of weapons that we had from early days of more than 15,000 or so, I forget the exact number now, but down to whatever it is today, we have reduced our number by close to 90% or over 90%. And I think we have been responsible, and I think we've been responsible stewards not only for the United States but for our allies. But in terms of testing, I think we've been very specific about under what conditions we might resume. I don't think they would have a strong negative impact to nuclear non-proliferation. But again, the safe and secure stockpile is what we have been saying all these years, and I don't think anything has changed. Back to you.
Very good. A related question from, again, apologize on mispronouncing your names, but Lieutenant Colonel Tibor Sankoli from the Embassy of Hungary. And his question is with regards to the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. And the question is, would you see beneficial to push the possible ratification of the CTBT by the United States?
So there's actually no difference right now because we have been observing CTBT, the objectives. Obviously, as a nation that has been responsible for keeping the nuclear weapons safe and secure at the same time having reduced over the years, I'm not sure what additional benefit we would get. But again, we have been consistent and how we've been working with the other nations, we have been very upfront. We are the first ones to make sure that we don't do what we call supercritical testing and all those things. You might have heard or read about the newspaper articles about some other countries maybe not doing, observing those agreements. But again, I don't think there would be a huge difference between I think we've been following the essence or the spirit of the CTBT objectives. So again, as the nation responsible for I don't want to say protecting the world, but again, leading the world for safe nuclear operations. I'm not sure if there's any real true benefit and ratifying. I think we're there already. So we do that by practice, and I think that speaks louder than the signing a piece of paper. But again, that's in my own personal observation.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Question in from, actually two-part question in from Peter Husey from the Mitchell Institute. Let me take this moment as I recognize Peter's questions. Again, how fortunate from, on behalf of Jeff Crater and myself with Advanced Nuclear Weapons Alliance Deterrence Center, what a pleasure it's been to be working with the Mitchell Institute on these series and with NNSA. So Peter, thanks for all your help. And here's the questions you have for Dr. Park. So the questions are, what are your biggest non-proliferation challenges? The second part, what future technologies gives you the most concern?
So the nuclear non-proliferation challenges. I may actually give you a totally off the wall response. So I'm going to look inward or inside our system first. When I started my career in the 80s in this business, I was the youngest, and one of the youngest. And now that I look around, and the people are not getting younger. I'm talking about the average. I think the Administrator Lisa Gordon-Hagerty and I'm certain Charlie Burton talked about the fact that we need to really make sure we attract and retain the quality staff. We've been able to do that. And I'm building up to actually do a little plug-in, by the way. Yesterday, we had the third virtual job fair at NNSA. We had over 1,500 people participating in the interviews. So my concern is a little bit addressed because we see such a large number of people interested in joining an NNSA complex. I use this analogy, so I'm going to use it again. But just the other day, people talk about how many years it would take to train a pilot. Guess how many years it would take to train people like me? Just as many, if not longer. So attracting is not good enough. Hiring is not good enough. We need to be able to retain them throughout the years. And that is actually one of the most difficult challenges that we are facing. And with the help from everybody, Congress and universities, we actually have a very robust university programs, by the way, working with the students and PhD students, masters, undergrads. We are able to keep training these next generation people. But again, I have this the concern and that unless we can maintain it, they would have a huge price to pay. And we should not sit on past performance and say we're doing well. We need to keep on worrying about next year, next 5 years, and next 15 years, next 25 years, and so on. And how to keep that going is one of the challenges we have. Knock on wood, we've been doing well, but we need to sustain it. And yet another analogy that I used, and this is right before my confirmation, is just because you have a dental checkup, it doesn't mean you don't need it ever again. And there's something similar to that in terms of actually having to go back and get yourself taken care of. But again, I know these are silly examples that I'm using. But again, you cannot use just the last just one example or the last few years to say we're okay. You can never relax getting the great quality people. And at the end of the day, what makes our nuclear non-proliferation work or NNSA work or DOE work strong is the people. That's it. Without the people, it
Very
just
good.
doesn't mean much.
All right, your screen
Back to you.
froze. I hope we're both. I hope I'm there and you're there. Screen
Yeah.
froze for a second. Very good. Well, we're almost at the end of our discussion here, but one more question in from Vic Reese, and very good to see you, Vic. Vic wants to know about the importance to non-proliferation of the United States having a robust civil nuclear power program. So appreciate your views on that.
Wow. So there's a legend, at least in my world. And let me just say thank you to all you've been doing, Vic. It starts with the innovation, right? I think the Rita at the Office of Nuclear Energy is really out there to make sure we out innovate. And so you heard, people should have heard a lot about SMR, small modular reactors and micro reactors and so on. And my role is more of a complementary or a support role to make sure, like I said earlier, non-proliferation requirements are baked into the design upfront. And one of the things we're doing in support of broader nuclear energy for peaceful use and taking the US leadership in the nuclear energy sector is, to just give you one example, we're working on the proliferation resistance optimized core. That's a long name. Essentially, it's a new fuel. They would actually have all the wonderful features built in. So by the time you're done using it, it'll be easier, simpler to get rid of it. So my guys are working on those things. So innovation is the way to go. We led the world in nuclear energy technologies. And I think it is a high time that we reclaim the leadership. And again, I'm one of the biggest supporters for nuclear energy, Office of Nuclear Energy, pushing that front. And we are very hopeful that we have a robust program. And many of the leaders in SMR or microreactors are all US based. And so we need to keep on funding them, work with them to make sure they can continue to lead. So there are some great examples that I am certain that you can find on Rita's webpage. But again, I think we're on our way to reclaim the leadership in the nuclear energy sector for peaceful purpose.
Outstanding. That's we're exactly well, we're a minute over actually, but not too bad. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you spending the time with us and giving us your thoughts, and so much to take for us to now think about and to help us in our daily job. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone from the Mitchell Institute, and thanks everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you very soon at another engagement with ANWA DC and the Mitchell Institute or either one of our organizations.